Okay, I think we're live. Hello guys, how are we doing? Just gonna check a couple of things before we really get started. Okay, we're looking good. How's everyone today? Alright, so in today's video, going to be looking through basically this document here. So I've got a few notes just kind of prepared for what my level 99 journey is with my Bowazon. Hang on, just going to make sure I'm speaking into the microphone here loud and clear. Okay, so this should be fine right here. I'll just make sure it's also switched on as well. Yep, cool. I'm not being a duffer. I've got the mic switched on. That's sweet. Okay. So, pretty much just kind of like a context for this. We kicked off Season 3 ladder, I think it was around mid-Feb, so it's about 2.5 months ago now. So we kicked that off. Alright, cool. Thanks, Scott. How you doing? Glad you can hear me. So we kicked off mid-Feb. I think it was like the 16th or 17th of Feb, depending on which part of the world you're in. And so Season 3 of Ladder, which is where they introduced a whole bunch of new rune words, such as Hustle and Cure and all those various Helm rune words, and the Drilled one, and my memory's just kind of not serving me very well at the moment, but yeah, just a bunch of new rune words as well as some bug fixes and stuff. So the one notable fix that they made for the Bowazon is actually the strafe bug that was covered in one of my videos like quite a while ago, I think sometime last year, where I explained and demonstrated that strafe itself was actually doing less damage and wasn't taking on the attack rating bonuses as advertised on the tooltip. And that was because of the recent sort of changes in patch 2.4 with the strafe buffs and all that sort of stuff, but they updated the wrong values in the skill, and so that's why it wasn't working. But that's been fixed up for season 3, or the patch for Season 3, and so that's probably one of the main things that's changed for Bowazons. The other thing is probably just a hustle rune word for both the armor and for the weapon. But I can go into a little bit more about that, but I'll just say that I didn't use the hustle weapon for ladder, even though it's actually not a bad choice. But anyway, on a high level, I just want to cover probably 3 parts to this really, and it's that the first part is the pre-ladder season preparation. The second part is actually just getting into the ladder itself and what my build is, and how that evolved over time. And then just some other stuff on top of that, such as like terror zones and how it all ended up. So they're probably the 3 high-level things that I'll cover in today's video. So I'll just sort of work my way down. This is kind of basically just my checklist on what I'll cover here. So pre-ladder season, I do remember, I think going as far back as like this very start of the year, or if not very late last year, I actually tried to find a team that would be cool to run with for ladder season 3. So I actually put a little bit of thought around like, or at least foresight into kind of preparing a team for the upcoming ladder. And so the team I wanted to run was actually like a melee based team. But in saying that, the exception to that rule being that we had one sorceress on. I was looking for one sorceress and one sorceress that ended up being in a team that can actually taxi our way through like normal, nightmare, and hell, just so that we can get into the later parts of the game very quickly. But that's pretty much the exception to that rule. So the team composition basically made up of 7 melee characters. I think one of them is kind of not really a melee character as such. We had a summon Necro. It wasn't a build that I had in mind in the beginning, but I thought we'll get a summon Necro in, at least that way we've got some tankability But at the same time, it's a necro that's not actually using corpse explosion, even though really pretty much a necro that's not using corpse explosion is either a PvP necro or really not a good necro otherwise. But anyway, we had Bowazon, which is myself, 3 paladins with different auras, so might, concentration, fanaticism, Fury Druid, so Fury Druid with, like, say, a polearm that can hit quite hard, but also using something like Hearted Wolverine or Oak Sage, depending on the situation. Barbarian for those shouts, as well as tankability as well. And of course the Summon Necro that I mentioned just a sec ago. And then the Sorceress. Now the Sorceress will be a specific taxi-based build. Basically, just going Frost Nova, Charge Bolt at the very beginning, and Static Field as well. And then once she gets access to Nova, basically just pump all the points into Nova, and then Teleport. So Teleport will be accessible from Act 2, where she can basically just teleport all the way through all of the content and get all the key stuff, and then just tell us to go through these key town portals so that we can complete Act bosses and a summoner and things like that. So that's kind of like the team composition, and the theme of the team really is about the melee-based build, so not using casters or caster-based skills, with the exception of the Sorceress, of course. Otherwise, she can't really do her job. And so that was the team that I had in mind and what we largely ended up running with. But in preparation for that, I had to go through all of the Discord servers, Blizzard forums, all that sort of stuff, and just post up and say that we're looking for people that are willing to play these melee-based characters, so Zealot, Barbarian, Druid, and eventually got a full team and then some on top of that. And so I'll go into a little bit about how I sort of managed all that. But the plan was to then have this team discuss the builds. So I kind of created and theory crafted all of the builds and how they would sort of gel together. Then we discussed the builds as well as the team composition overall and the strategies behind it. So I put together a little bit of a playbook on how we would run, starting from the very start, Act 1 normal on the ladder kickoff, all the way into, I think I only wrote as far as probably like Act 2 of Nightmare, or actually I did write all the way through actually. Yeah. So got that playbook happening, and then we kind of did a couple of practice rounds. The first one was I think only up to Act 2 or something like that, and then the first one we got a little bit further. The second one we got a little bit further. And then, so based on how those practice rounds went, we then sort of adjusted the sort of like the strategies, as well as kind of like just brushing up on what the players did wrong, and just sort of say like things like pick up stamina pots, strangling gas potions, and do actually use them, because they help out a lot in the early stages of the game. But one particular change we did do was actually use a Thorns-based build at the very start for one of the Paladins, and that basically rode the team quite well, because that Thorns damage is not only, it hits hard, but it's also a very reliable form of damage, assuming you get hit, because there's no kind of like hit checks or anything like that. So, but part of the problem with D2R is the whole attack rating kind of hit check system, where every time you swing your weapon, it does an attack rating check, and then it also does a block check as well. And so it's kind of like you find it very hard to hit monsters that are anywhere near above your level. And so Thorns is actually pretty good in sort of helping us out. And it's sort of basically supplemented on top of the damage we were dealing with our attacks as well. So that's where Thorns is quite great. So anyway, with the team planning aspects of it, the logistics and everything like that, had to organize when everybody could get together for the practice rounds. We had a Discord chat going, just like sort of every day, like people talking about the builds and all that sort of stuff. But in terms of trying to queue things up for the ladder season itself, I had to organize some leave dates from work to be able to leave enough time for the particularly vital parts of the early parts of ladder where progression is quite important so that you can get those key items and trade them off quite quickly and quite profitably, so that you can advance even further into the latter season. But yeah, we did some practice rounds. I think the practice rounds were also good because it also we got to run through how we communicated as a team. Not everybody was able to voice chat, for example, so like we had to also learn to kind of like type in the game as well, so that those people could actually respond and type and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so that's all of the preparation stuff for our team. But then obviously we had more people kind of join on, even though we had a full team already. So what I also had to do on top of that is actually prepare teams number 2 and even direct other players to maybe join the other content creators teams as well. So like Double Billy was one of them, and then Kavoth as well. Sorry, I keep forgetting how to pronounce his name, but hopefully you know who I'm talking about here, the European player. And so basically we had 3-4 groups of people, and then I created one massive ladder group chat so that we could use that to communicate and say like, hey, we need some players, or I want to find a game to join, or hey, I've found these items, who needs them, and who needs help with Diablo clone and all that sort of stuff. So we had a large group going on, like sort of like the Battle.net client chat room, and use that quite a lot to kind of communicate between something like 24 players or something like that. So that was actually quite good. It allowed to fill games easier and yeah, all that sort of stuff. So that was a degree of sort of preparation that we did for this latter season, and I basically drove a lot of that. Yeah, so into like the broader strategy of the team. So as I said, we have 7 melee characters. So again, myself as a Bowazon, 3 paladins with different damage auras. That was a long-term strategy of having like might, concentration, fanaticism, but at the start of it, we rode Thorns for quite a while before that became slowly ineffective. Then we had a Fury Druid Barbarian with like Battle Orders and Leap as well. He was also supporting the Sorceress. Summon Necro, who can tank, but also cast Amplified Damage as well, which is a big damage adder. And then the Sorceress, who can sort of take us through the game, and then later on convert it into like an Enchantress as well. So you can use Enchant to buff all of the melee characters and even all of the summons as well, with fire damage and a boost to attack rating. So that was the broad strategy for the team in terms of the team composition. As I mentioned, Thorns in the early game, that helped quite a lot. It just made a massive difference. For tanks, yeah, we had melee characters, and then myself, I could basically, as a Bowazon, just spec in as a glass cannon. I have Valkyries in decoy still, so I've got that independence if I'm farming by myself. Initially, I had poison damage delivered from afar, so like Multishot and Magic Arrow, and basically it was just like a 3-tailed bow, so like 3 tail runes in a bow, 3-socket bow because that's all you could get in the early stages. What else was there? But yeah, that was actually good damage in the beginning, and I was mainly the DPS character in the team overall. Later on, I managed to get like a edge bow, so that I could use that to run through Nightmare and whatever. So the other thing is, yeah, the triple auras eventually is something that we got, and then amplified damage on the Necro. So we've got a lot of team boosts really. So got the enchant, got amplified damage, we've got the triple auras, and then we've got the survivability boost as well from like Oak Sage and Battle Orders and things like that. And then myself as mainly the DPS character. Amazon doesn't really have a whole lot in terms of boosting the team other than just her damage really. So that's where that was basically my role in the team. And then eventually, once we got into Hell, this is where we start doing things like chaos runs for XP and items and all that sort of stuff. But that didn't last a whole long period of time, as far as I know. There was, I think, attrition of players set in quite early in the latter season, where like half the players basically quit after I think a week or two. And so that was something that I kind of contended with quite early. And so had to come up with different strategies to kind of deal with that. But I'll talk about that a little bit better, a little bit later on. In terms of the day of kickoff, so ladder kickoff, we ran with the full team, so everybody showed up, which is a plus, first of all. We then managed to get to like Act 2 or Act 3 Hell. I can't remember where it was exactly, maybe it was just Act 1 actually. In the first 4.5 hours before I actually had to log off and attend to like dinner and stuff for my mum's birthday. And so I basically sort of left it from there. Everybody else sort of continued on, but I think some people sort of dropped off around that time as well. And there was a part where like the first 4.5 hours is actually quite good. Like we made a lot of good progress for a team that was basically a fresh team and also a fully melee based team as well. So none of those like OP caster ones where they can just hit the ground running fairly quickly because they don't have all the hit checks and they've got AoE and all that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, I kind of got the sense that things started to fall apart a little bit after I left. I don't know why I wasn't actually around for it. But actually there was a part where some of the team actually respect into other characters, sort of without my sort of knowledge and sort of thumbs up, which I was a team leader of this obviously and trying to organize this melee based team. So understandably, I was a little bit pissed off about that. But anyway, that kind of sort of blew off in the end. But yeah, maybe I'll cover that a little bit later on as well. Like, it might be in my notes down here. Yeah, so that happened, but then I came on a little bit later on that night and then got myself into at least Act 4, Act 5. I don't know if I had killed Bale at that point, but was definitely XP farming at that point anyway. So managed to get quite a few levels and was able to continue that. So incidentally, that was around the stage where I managed to get my Hellforge quest and got an rune for it, and then I actually used that rune to trade for Windforce very, very early. So that really helped me out in the entire ladder season, so yeah, I was quite happy with that. Okay, so just within the team and sort of like before we jumped into the ladder season and all that sort of stuff, there was a few things that sort of came up that we experienced. So in the practice matches, in the practice sessions, there were a number of deaths that took place, and I found it to be quite unexpected because a lot of deaths actually took place in Act 1 around like stony fields or underground passage and those kind of areas, which I found quite bizarre because it was very, very early parts of the game where I thought, you know, with experienced enough players, they wouldn't really experience those kind of things, but it did happen. And the number of deaths were actually fairly non-trivial as well. So it wasn't just like one person died and that's it. Like we just saw like kind of like death after death sort of thing. And yeah, it kind of sort of cramped our ability to kind of sort of move through the play session. But nevertheless, there were some deaths where could have been avoided with a different strategy. So we kind of saw that Act 1 was actually okay in our first session, but Act 2 was where we really started to struggle as a melee-based team, trying to power our way through quite quickly. So that's where I had a chance to actually rethink our strategies a little bit and sort of adjusted it in the second play session, which is where things went a lot better. So one of the changes we did was, I mentioned earlier, was for one of the paladins to actually use thorns, which was quite good. And the other strategy was to sort of readjust our playbook so that our team was together more often, working as a singular unit, rather than splitting off too much, doing their own things, because splitting off, you're obviously a lot weaker than if you had like 2 or 3 or 4 other players with you at the same time. So those were the two main adjustments in terms of strategy, but in terms of kind of like execution as well, I advise a team to use strangling gas potions if you're fighting minion packs. Use potions more often and more preemptively. So like, for example, not using a potion until, like, say you're like 40 or 30% health is gonna likely get you killed. Whereas if you use your potions quite early, let's say you're at 80% health, and then you can let your potion get to work, but you still have some life left before your health goes down too much. So those are sort of things I mentioned, as well as like positioning as well and leveraging your team so that if you're feeling hurt too much or you're feeling swarmed, just step back and let the other team members sort of take the heat a little bit. So just those sorts of things are kind of mentioned to the team just to kind of help our survivability, particularly at the start of the game. But also, yeah, I guess it sort of showed, I think on some level at least, a certain lack of experience of some of the players, and I think that's fine. But what does kind of show up is that you get players that are experiencing D2, like that they know how to farm, particularly in the end game, and the end game is where most people spend most of their time in. So like doing all those MF runs like Mephisto, Pindleskin, Terror Zones, all that sort of stuff. And that's where your characters are most decked out and don't have a lot of weaknesses that need to be filled. But playing from the start with new characters, that's something that not a lot of people do very often. And so with that, there's a lack of experience that a lot of people have playing from the very start, and as a result sort of shines through or shun through as a result of our practice sessions. So that was something that did come up a little bit as well. Yeah, and yeah, some people might say, look, I'm experienced with these many characters and I've played later seasons before, but then they don't actually ended up living up to sort of how they advertise themselves as well. So that's always a possibility too. But yeah, anyway, that's sort of the thing that you need to watch out for if you're looking to build a ladder team. And these are certainly the things that I ended up going through as well. One sec, I'll just grab a drink. All right, so as part of going through the practice sessions and all of the deaths that the players experienced, it naturally brought about frustrations within the team of like you can imagine if you're a person that died like 10 times during a practice session of 2 hours, like you could imagine like being pretty frustrated about that. And so that naturally crept into our Discord chats and things like that. And so whenever I notice this sort of stuff, like, certain levels of toxicity could come through as well as that. And, like you could boil it down to like, sort of like issues with attitude or, just like people just wanting to simply just let off some steam and things like that. That's fine. It's kind of normal as long as they kind of keep it to a minimum. But if you do really find people that are really cramping the chats and just trying to bring down people's sort of morales and positivity, then that's an opportunity that I think you need to take to kind of pull them aside and say like, hey, what's wrong, mate? Is there anything I can help you with? And depending on how they respond from there is a good opportunity to, pardon me, to kind of screen people's or team players or team members sort of like viability, whether they should really stay in the team or whether they should move on. And on that point, it's always good to keep looking for players to fill your team just in case you come across these situations. And then there's always the whole thing of like, oh, the ladder date got announced, but I can't make it on that date because I've got such and such event, which almost happened to me with the dinner that I had on the same day that ladder came out. I was actually surprised that they announced it for that date, but anyhow, I still roll with it. I played for the first 4.5 hours and got into hell, so I thought it was good enough. Um, but yeah, those kind of negativity sort of things can come in if you're running a team, and so you really need to kind of pick it apart and just make sure it doesn't continue to happen. Because otherwise, if you don't pick it up and point it out, then people will continue to do that. Like, there's a very good chance. Like, they don't think, oh, I'm doing something wrong here, and so they've got no reason to kind of stop behaving in that way. Um, yeah, so anyway, there was a bit about after I logged out, after the first 4.5 hours, some team members respec into non-melee based builds after dying repeatedly in the hell progression. And so this is something that I sort of took issue with the players that ended up doing that. And it was kind of funny because I took issue with it, and then they kind of responded quite aggressively in response to that, which I found quite bizarre. Because they joined a team knowing that it was a melee-based team, and then expected that I wouldn't have an issue with it if they respec into like a Hammerden, for example. It's like, okay, did you honestly expect me to kind of not take issue with that being a melee-based team? Yeah, so I found that quite bizarre, and kind of like the sort of self-justifications and all that sort of thing, and the all of the mental gymnastics associated with people coming up with excuses as to why they did that. And it's like, oh, I didn't tell you I was going to do that because you're at dinner and I didn't want to interrupt you, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, well, you didn't really do yourself justice to kind of cover your ass there. So, but anyhow, I'm just letting you know this because this is something that happened, and the best way to kind of deal with that is to just show as much patience as you can as a team leader, because if it kind of looks like that they're getting under your skin and you respond in a weird way, then that will kind of rub off on the rest of the team and sort of raise doubts in their mind as to whether they can actually raise legitimate issues with you, and have trust in you that you'll respond in an appropriate way. So that's probably one thing that I will add to that. So apart from that, as we did our playthrough, I encountered what I would classify as conflicts of interest, okay? And so these are specifically things that come about where the kind of distractions for the team that would pull them away from doing the main task of actually progressing through into hell in order to pursue some alternate task. And specifically in this case, this was people's desire and will to try to accumulate forum gold during the early parts of the ladder reset, where certain items found very, very early on would fetch quite a lot of forum gold for what they are. So in this case, it was actually a 4 open socket crystal sword that you could find in normal cows. I don't know if you can actually find it anyway, but anyway, it doesn't matter. We found a crystal sword, and then we used a socket quest to get 4 sockets so that we can make a spirit rune word out of that. So those 4 open socket crystal swords were actually going for somewhere between 500 to 1,000 forum gold on the first day of ladder, and some of the team members were actually trying to sell those. And so I got pissed off at the team because I was like, you're sitting here having a conversation about you're jumping on JSP and trying to set up trading threads. And meanwhile, the rest of the team is actually sitting back and waiting for you to do this, and we can't actually progress finishing the cow run. And I was like trying to communicate with the team, and it was like everybody was just sort of like immersed in this whole let's get forum gold conversation. And then so I was like, no, we're not having this. So I just basically told them off on the spot. So that's something that I didn't anticipate at all happening, and I probably should have, but I didn't. But it's definitely one of the things that we experience and something to kind of learn for future ladder seasons. Now, so in terms of how to actually get around that. I don't quite know. I don't know if you could go so far as to say like all forum gold training is banned, but I think he just set some kind of expectation here to say like, if you're playing by yourself, then by all means do whatever you want. But if you're playing as a team, then just focus on the team, something like that. But yeah, it's not something that I saw coming because I myself don't have a JSP account or forum gold. So that's kind of like far removed from my sort of mind. And so I was like, oh, okay, that kind of took me by surprise a little bit. But anyhow, that happened, and there could be more forms of conflict of interest happening as well. I don't think it's like team sabotage or anything like that. Like I'm not thinking anything like that, but I mean, who knows? Like forum gold and all that sort of stuff is certainly one of the big things here at the start of a ladder season, because people do like to accumulate that stuff. And yeah, personally, it doesn't take my interest, but people do. But yeah, some of the positives that came out of creating a team and creating a larger team, or like a few tribes of teams, if you will, is that declone kills, when they first came about, a lot of people had sort of struggled to kill their first Diablo clone. And so me and some of the other few players that managed to solo the declone were able to then sort of like help other people get their first Annies as well. And so I actually did this live on stream, and that was actually quite fun. Sometimes as a reward, those players would be like, if the Annie happens to be a better role, then you can keep that one, sort of thing. So sometimes that works out that way too. The other positive thing, I guess, is that with a larger team, it opens up opportunities for helping each other out with like power rushes, socket quest rushes, and even organize group MF or experience games, so chaos runs, bail runs, and things like that. So if you needed to fill games with more people, let's say you've got 5 or 6 players in there, then you can invite 1 or 2 others to come in and they can join as well, like just like an open-ended invite. Whoever comes first fills the game. And then also like trading and wish list type stuff as well. So you can post up like wish lists to say like, I'm looking for these sorts of items, and whoever found it first can basically share those items with the team. So it does help out with those kind of things, to be organized and to prepare like a team or a few teams at the start of the season. Having said that though, with Blizzard announcing the start of the ladder season being basically 2 days from now, this was announced, I think it was just a week and a half ago, in, of all places, the Diablo 4 live stream. So it was announced there that there'll be a new season of Diablo 2 Resurrected, which I found quite bizarre and a bit bemusing as well. But I'll get into that actually in a separate video about sort of like my grievances around all that, but I won't talk about that now. So yeah, in terms of what lessons were learnt out of all this, the first one is obviously to vet players better than what I was doing. Obviously, it's easier said than done, but what you want to be doing is, especially with the conflicts of interests that came up in the ladder season, is to actually ask players what their goals are for ladder, and sort of qualify or disqualify players based on the various questions that you ask them. So if they say, for example, my primary goal is to actually accumulate forum gold, then that player might not be for you. You might want to just be like, oh, I want to be the first one to reach level 99. Then those players that want to go for forum gold be like, okay, maybe that's not the right fit for you, so I won't put you in the team, and then you just keep looking for new players. But as I said, it's easier said than done, because there's only a certain time window where you could actually look for players. And I say this because if you look for players too early, then there's just simply not enough interest from players to actually join or start looking for another team in a ladder season. But if you leave it too late, then you just don't leave yourself enough time to actually get all of the players that you need. So I guess actually what I would recommend here is to just start looking as soon as possible anyway. And you might not get interest in the beginning, but over time, especially as announcements come up, you'll start to suddenly get peaks of interest come through, and then that's where you can pick up the first lot of players and then vet those first. Yeah, so the other one is, again, account for conflicts of interest. So if you're not interested in having players that are more interested in Forum Gold or JSP, then you can basically discard those players. And if you're just looking for players that just want to have fun and get to 99 first and don't care about the consequences post-ladder, then you can put those on your team instead. The whole player attrition thing, I mentioned, like within the first week or two of ladder, a lot of players started to drop off, or at least started to play significantly less often. So that certainly did happen as well. And so I had to change my strategy a bit because of that, but I'll get into that in just a bit. So, and then for long term, in terms of lesson learned here as well, is that if you do find players that were really good in your team and they were absolutely solid players and all that sort of stuff, make sure you keep them around. And like for the next ladder season, just take note of what those players are and reach out to them for the next ladder season, because it does take time and a lot of effort to try to vet these players. And if you have like a pool of players that you can call upon, like just virtually straight away, and you know that they're high interest when it comes to the next ladder season, then that's going to be really valuable for you. Okay, so in terms of change in strategy, because of the player attrition and how all of that set in, public games started to become more necessary and attractive to continue that really acceptable rate of XP grind. Because as you know, the more players in the game, the more XP you get, and especially if you can solo content, you're going to get more of that XP rather than sharing that around. So that's basically how you get to level 99, guys, is basically doing solo TZ content with everybody else doing whatever. That's the strategy that Teo uses in every single ladder season, Llama in season 2 as well. He would have players basically sitting in his game and he would just go and solo all of the TZ content. And it just works like clockwork because they've got armies of people supporting them, so that's why they're able to do that first. But yeah, public games became a necessity because just getting the amount of players from our group to join games and stuff during the right times was just impossible, or started to become impossible. So going into public games is something that I had to start doing. And so the other issue which leading into that then is, as a Bowazon player, getting drops was an issue, right? So as a Bowazon shooting from afar, because I'm a ranged character, and because when monsters die, they obviously drop loot at their feet pretty much, right? So if they're dropping loot at the feet, melee characters or caster characters that are a lot more closer or able to tank because, you know, they're max vitality, like they're Hammerden or an Oversork or something like that, they're fairly tanky, high DPS characters. They are also able to stand up close. Same with a martial arts assassin as well. They're able to stand closer, and so when gear drops, they're able to pick it up straight away. Whereas me as a Bowazon, one of the big problems was actually being able to get that loot, that juicy loot, so the runes, high-end uniques and all that sort of stuff. And so if I was to play in public games where we all sort of grouped up together as a group and killing stuff, then I would virtually miss out on all of the drops, and I'll just pick up things like gems and jewels that people don't bother picking up and all that sort of stuff. So that was a big issue for me. Yeah, I'll get into sort of how I come to address that just a little bit later on. But in terms of like the strategy, was basically to run bell runs, like public bell run games or team bell run games within our team, up to about level 93, which is around the cutoff before Terror Zones become the content that you should be farming for XP purposes. But the other thing about Terror Zones as well is Sunder Charms. So Sunder Charms only drop from Terrazone content, and so if you're on the first couple of days of ladder and you happen to come by some Sunder Charms, then they're going to be very valuable to trade off, especially perfect ones. So if you can get some Sunder Charms early or earlier on in the ladder season, and I think within the first kind of like 3 weeks, then they're still relatively valuable. But after that, they slowly become less valuable to the point where I eventually started giving them away for free. But yeah, so that's sort of like the Bale Run versus Terrazone sort of like way up between like which one do you do, and depending on what you want to go for at the time, you go for Sunder Charms if you want to trade off for items and runes, or Bale Runs if you just want to do that XP grind. Now, drops in solo TZs. So the solution to not getting the drops was obviously doing the Terrazone content all by myself, because if there's no one else around to actually kill stuff in the Terrazone, then that also means that if I'm doing all the killing and getting all the drops, then that means I've got all the drops that I can pick up from. And so that's what I basically did for the remainder of the ladder. And in doing so, I got a lot of drops as a result of that, and I can go into some more of the details of what those drops are as I work through what the gear and build progression was for my character, but I'll also cover like specific drops as well. So yeah, so I'll get into that. I think yeah, we covered enough of all that up there. So for the gear and build progression of my Bowazon, so just to kind of start things off, actually I will sort of bring my character up on screen. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Actually, I'll do that in a bit. I won't do that right now. So to start off, I had a Multishot Bowazon. That was my starting character from level 1 in the ladder season. So Magic Arrow, Multishot, Guided Arrow, Strafe. Started off with a 3-tailed bow, and then eventually getting an insight bow. Initially an exceptional version of an insight bow, and then eventually got a blade bow insight. Heavily invested in dex because basically a glass cannon build, and I at the time had a Valkyrie decoy and team members to kind of tank for me as well. And largely I kind of stuck to that anyway. As my Valkyrie and Mercury got stronger, I was able to just use those to tank stuff. There's one particular point where it enabled me to basically solo TZ content all by myself, but it's just sort of somewhere down here, so I'll cover that in a bit. And so in terms of skills and stuff, yeah, so I'll actually just jump into the character now. 1 second. Alright, so I will switch off this one here. Okay, so I'll just show the skill tree. And so basically this is kind of like the fit out that I was doing right from the start. And so yeah, Magic Arrow, Multishot, Guided Arrow, and Strafe. Now, Magic Arrow, I had a lot of points in at the very start because it really helped with that attack rating when I was like under-leveled in various parts of the game. And that would help me try to hit stuff more often than if I was to use like Multishot or whatever. Once I started getting the insight bow, that became less of an issue as insights. Let's see if I can find an insight here. So before I got insight, actually, I was actually using an edge as well. So I was using that with Valkyrie, Decoy, and a Mercenary to inflict some reliable Thorns damage. But once I got the insight, which I think I gave away actually, but insight has like a huge bonus to attack rating. So that allows your multi-shots and stuff to hit more often. Multi-shot in the beginning, I sort of kept it very, very low, like level 7 or something like that. Because what you want to ensure is that your mana leech isn't outpaced by the mana consumption of Multishot. So this is in terms of trying to level up a Bowazon into the later parts of the game. That's what you want to be doing. Guided Arrow is the first skill that you max as a Bowazon because it adds the damage, but also it's the primary skill for single target bosses and things like that. And it's also handy for just taking out those harder to kill monsters as well in the beginning because it's got the always hit proc on it. And then Strafe. So Strafe I got a little bit later on, just as a 1-point wonder, and that's really all you need for Strafe. That allows you to basically just use the Strafe skill, use the plus skills to kind of boost it up a little bit. And after like level 4 or 5, it hits 10 arrows. So you're shooting the maximum number of arrows anyway, and any further skill points into this skill only increases your damage by like 5% per each skill point and attack rating by I think it's like 9% or something. But if you also got like penetrate as well, that adds 10% per level. Yeah, so I feel like between that and Strafe, like you don't really need the attack rating too much from Strafe here because you've already got penetrate, but it does help a little bit. So 1-point wonder there, because I feel like if you add more, it's not really high value in terms of where you could put your skill points thereafter. So this is basically the kind of the build that I was going with. And then critical strike, want this fairly high, but not too high too quickly. You just kind of want to pace it a little bit. As you start to get more plus skills and things like that, then you can add some more into critical strike. Penetrate is something you want to max out as soon as possible. If you're using pretty much any other bow option, so like Insights, Eagle Horn, Mist, Wind Force. So Wind Force I mentioned, I traded that off, not traded off, sorry, I traded for Wind Force with an Rune. No, I don't have another Wind Force in here. But yeah, Wind Force, you really do need that attack rating because it basically offers none. It's just a damage stick. So you do need to max out that penetrate. And then with Razor Tail, you only need about 9 skill level 9 in total for this one, even after plus skills. But even in the early parts of the game, when I say early, when you're like level 70 or 80, I wouldn't stress too hard about trying to get 100% pierce at that stage because there's just more important things to kind of put your points in, or like different belts that you might want to use. So you don't have to go at all costs just getting 100% pierce straight away. And then you need a half decent Valkyrie just to kind of allow it to stand on its own so that you don't have to recast it every 2 or 3 seconds. So like if you were to get like a 1-pointer, then that'll only be like a level 6 Valkyrie, and that's just going to get swatted like a fly fairly quickly in Terror Zone content in particular as well. And so you want a high level Valkyrie just so that it can stay alive a lot longer, especially for enemies like Deathlords and the fanaticism, some like boss packs and things like that. So yeah, I guess getting back into the items, I'll leave this screen up anyway, but yeah, so for the items, yeah, Insight Blade Bow, and then got an Rune. I traded a Wind Force for that, and I initially shaled the... oh, it's not in here. I initially shaled the Wind Force to get that attack speed because I didn't have any of this sort of stuff, right? So, and so I was using like a Tails Mask at the time, and so I think I might have socketed that with an attack speed jewel, but the other thing I did have actually was a Hustle Armor to help boost that attack speed as well. So that was basically my armor of choice before using Fortitude here. But I don't think I've got that Hustle Armor anymore. I gave it away. So Hustle Armor offers 40% attack speed, 65% fast run walk, and like some extra dodging, and I forget what all the other mods are, but the main sort of mods are really the attack speed and the 65 fast run walk. That is absolutely huge. So I use that to kind of help get from place to place a lot quicker, as well as meet my attack speed breakpoints with Wind Force quite easily. So, but I did have a shelled Wind Force, and then later when I got enough attack speed, I actually put in a 39% ED jewel with 14 max damage. I traded it for that one for an Rune, as this is kind of like pretty much best in slot for a wind force here. But yeah, basically was using this for quite a long time after that. But what really enabled my build to kind of solo farm Terror Zones was actually just getting a Reaper's Toll from a mercenary. So I was using a Wind Force with Strafe, Multishot, Guided Arrow, and then the Reaper's Toll to help firstly keep my mercenary alive because it had that Decrepified proc. It also boosted my damage as well with that minus 50% physical resistances on enemies. So it's basically double damage. It also has like a fairly chunky damage on its own. So that 235% ED is an example, ignores target defense, 15% life stolen per hit to help keep the Merc alive, and then also that Deadly Strike as well, which will help keep the Merc alive through larger life leech and all that sort of stuff. So this one is, yeah, it can't be understated. This is one of the best weapons that you can put on a mercenary, and it's not a ethereal one as well. Like an ethereal one will be even better, but I traded for this one. I think it was like an Istrune at the time, just because of how good they are. Like it was definitely worth the investment. And so with that and Windforce together, I was basically able to solo TZ content once I got these two items, and that was really good. So that's where I started to do a lot of solo-based TZ content, and as a result of that, able to get all the drops and the faster XP. The other things to talk about here are the Annie. So got an Annie. Initially, it was a worse one than this, but it was a 10% XP one. You absolutely want a 10% XP Annie just to really save you a lot of that time, because all that time really does add up. So if you can imagine, it takes like 10 hours, let's say, to get from, I don't know, level 97 to 98 or something like that. Might be even more time than that. Then with an Annie, you can actually cut that down from like 10 hours to like 9 hours as an example, just because of that XP boost alone. Let me see what else. I just want to make sure I haven't missed anything. Oh yes. One thing I do note is that this charm here, we actually found this in normal, and I'm still using it now here. This is absolutely monster charm to find in normal difficulty, and yeah, you can see it's 10 max damage, 75 attack rating, and 21 life. So yeah, that is a really monster find, by one of our team members actually, when we were sort of grouped together and trying to work through the first few hours of ladder. So that was really awesome. But yeah, apart from that, like just talking about the early stages, really is just going for a bunch of charms with life, attack rating, max damage, and then like resistances on top of that as well. So in terms of early level charms, pardon me, that's what I was going for. Initially I was using like a Sanders boots here as well, and it was actually quite a while before I replaced it with War Traps. And then Ravenfrost came in kind of early as well, and we managed to get like a half decent Jewel Leech ring somewhere too. So I'll see if I can find that one. I probably got rid of it somehow. I think it might be that one there. I can't remember now. Yeah, it could be that one there. We found this one. I think it was in Hell somewhere. It might have been an Ormus quest or something. But this is like, we got a Jewel Leech ring that was actually pretty awesome. And so I got to use that for a while. Maybe it's this one here. Like, there's a couple of them. It's either that one or this one. So yeah, those are some of the lucky drops that we found relatively early. And then Laying of Hands, I just got this one through like a bunch of perfect amethysts or something like that I picked up over time. Let's see what else. So yeah, I think I covered a lot of the early parts. So in terms of what you want to be looking for on your Bowazon build, you want to be looking for run walk. So the more run walk you have, the more quickly you can get from pack to pack and actually kill them. Also makes you move around town quicker and all that sort of stuff as well, but definitely run walk is an important stat to have on a Bowazon, so try to stack that as much as you can. And you can see that I have definitely tried to stack that with these charms here, and yeah, obviously here, and also this circlet as well. You can do Cat's Eye here. I went with High Lords just because I already got enough run walk from items, and then on top of that, Harmony as well. So Harmony I rolled after my last Insight, and yeah, this is the one that I've got. So this one allows you to kind of run a lot quicker compared to just something like that. So it is a huge boost to your run walk, and I highly recommend it as a switch option for your Bowazon. So yeah, that's run walk. Now attack rating you definitely need to have, especially if you're not using a faith. And that's where these charms become useful, because I've got 72, 72, 68. So all this attack rating will really add up, and you're also going to get your main source of attack rating from dexterity as well. So dexterity, each point will pump up 5 points in attack rating, and with all the boosts from like penetrate and fanaticism, and even from this bow as well, it bumps it up really significantly. But that's only with faith. If you got like a wind force based build, you're only going to have about 8,000 attack rating here, and it does make a huge difference. But yeah, that's attack rating. Damage, obviously a no-brainer. Yeah, you want to get as much damage as you can. So this one's got damage as well. Deadly Strike. So there's a number of pillars in, I call them pillars, right? So you've got raw damage, you've got attack rating, attack speed, critical strike / deadly strike, and then things like amp damage and decrepify. Those are the sort of pillars. So there's like 6 pillars or 7 pillars of damage that you can increase to kind of increase your overall DPS. So you want to be increasing all of those pillars as much as you can. So Mana Leech, I've got this one here. You just want enough Mana Leech so that you can sort of outpace your multi-shot consumption. Otherwise, it's going to be an issue in maintaining that constant fire rate. Magic Arrow for dealing with physical immunes. So this one here, I've got at level 26 actually. Yeah, that's actually quite high. But yeah, that's going to be good for physical immunes, but also for certain tanky monsters as well, like particularly in Act 4. There's some monsters that have high physical resistances, so this is going to be quite useful for them. Valkyrie, and yeah, I did mention Reaper's Toll earlier as kind of like your staple for making sure that your Merc stays strong and you can firmly sit in place and just constantly wail on the monsters. And Valkyrie certainly helps with that too. Your Valkyrie is actually going to be the main tank. Your Mercenary is kind of like a semi-tank, but it's something that you need to pay attention to make sure he stays alive. If your Valkyrie dies, it doesn't matter, but she's also definitely more tankier than your Mercenary as well. But your Mercenary is mainly just for that DPS add. So if I was to step out of town, you can see how much of a damage difference it adds. So if we go here, maybe over here, see, it bumped up from like 7,400 to just over 9,000. And then if he switches on his Might Aura as well, you can see how much of a boost that will give. Okay, killed him too quickly. Try and find another pack. But yeah, I don't need to really labor this point, but yeah, as soon as we get the might proc on it, then we'll start to see 10k on this one for sure. So yeah, here we go. I think the Merc might die over here actually, so let's just go up here. So yeah, anyway, yeah, those are sorts of things that you really should be looking for as a foundation for your Bowazon. Obviously, you're looking at a end game level 99 Bowazon here, so don't expect to have kind of like these sort of damage numbers here. There we go, we've got the 10k. But basically, you just need to be paying attention to those important factors. So run, walk, attack rating, damage. Mana leech is the main part. As long as you're able to leech more than that you spend, then that's really all you're looking for. Magic Arrow, Valkyrie, Reapers in the beginning stages of your endgame Bowazon journey is going to be highly variable. I didn't mention in the notes attack speed, but I guess I mentioned that earlier as well anyway. But yeah, those are the sorts of things that you want to be looking out for and look out for as much as you can. Obviously things like resistance stuff, the things that you already know about if you don't play Bowazon already. But life, you can see I've got 900 here. It's not a lot, and I could probably get away with less. But because I was doing level 99 grind, and you know, every time you die, it is really punishing on your XP. So I opted to kind of play a little bit safe, and especially with all the lag and stuff as well, which can happen. And the way that the hit mechanics work sometimes in Diablo 2 is a little bit clunky. So sometimes things don't behave as you expect them to. And so you can get some unexpected, unfortunate events happen as well. So that's why, yeah, I've got 900, so it's not by no means too much. I don't have a CTA on Switch or anything like that, because as a Bowazon, you really don't need it. It's really better to have like the faster run walk. So I don't have that, and haven't put too many points in Vitality so that I can max out on Dexterity for that attack rating, damage output, because they're really the vital things that you need as a Bowazon. So keep that in mind if you ever do make one. Elemental Bowazon, different story, but this is talking about a multi-shot strafe Bowazon. You definitely need this stat here. So I'll just go up here just to make sure I don't get bothered. But let's see, I'll just go through some of the other notes here. Maybe I'll just go back to town actually, because I'll just sort of switch this off. I'll just go back here, just give me a sec guys. Okay, so this one here, just back in my notes. As I went on, as I said, I traded a Umrune for a Wind Force. So this was a really big trade for me, and it's something that you probably can't do as part of me. The ladder season continues on because the Wind Forces, I think, get a bit more expensive. They're up to like a Istrune or Vex rune or thereabouts, because not a lot of people roll a Bowazon as their first character on ladder. And so there's going to be an influx of Wind Forces at the start of ladder that people basically just want to palm off, so that they can trade for like your Hodos or your Shakos and Perfect Rolled Spirits or you know, things like that, for mainly for caster characters. But as people start to make non-meta builds like Bowazons and things like that, they increase in demand a little bit and probably go up to like Ist or Vex rune. And yeah, but this was a big trade for me because it happened, I think, in the first 4 days of ladder. I got this Wind Force, and so it really propelled my build up quite well. And this is where it becomes important to have a solid strategy at the start of ladder, because without it, you can't progress into Hell very quickly, which then you won't get the items and the Hellforge quest rewards like the Umrune, which then, if that's delayed, then you need to kind of wait until you can save up for an Istrune before you can trade for Wind Force, though it has a really bad knock-on effect if you're really slow in the beginning parts of ladder. So yeah, once I got the Wind Force, I was able to sort of not really hold my own, but in a team I was able to really contribute some really good damage in like say Chaos and Bale runs. A bit after that, it was when I got my Hustle Armor, which is very, very good, as I said, before you get a Fortitude. It allows you to run fast, it attacks faster. I wish I had it on me just so I can show you what the stats were, because I honestly don't remember at the moment. But yeah, Hustle Armor, very good. Treachery, this one I think I still do have. Yeah, this one here. I'll put this on my Mercenary, just for that attack speed bonus and also for that fade proc. It's probably not the best armor for Merc survivability and damage, but it is what I have. I didn't want to spend too much on my Mercenary, as really the main important thing is this Pride here. So that's all I've got on him. Pardon me. So Treachery, been using that up until now. Same with the Tails Mask. But before Tails Mask actually, I was using the Tails Mask on myself before I eventually transferred it onto my Mercenary. But before my Mercenary was using that, he was actually using a Cure. So Cure is still in my stash here. This one here has a cleansing aura, so that if you do get cursed, or if your Merc gets cursed, then what was I going to say? Then, like say, amp damage and things like that, then that can kind of rub off fairly quickly, and it also boosts like poison res and stuff as well, so that's kind of handy there. But it also does wipe out experience shrines quicker as well, so this is just something to keep in mind. Alright. Sanders boots, I mentioned just before, I got those relatively early. I think it might have been a hand-me-down from one of the team members, or I found it or traded for it or something, but they're not too hard to come across anyway. Same with laying of hands, so they're a little bit harder to come by, but I think I traded for it for gems or something. Ravenfrost, I don't remember exactly when I got my first Ravenfrost. Do note that all of the items here pretty much listed in order of a rough order of when I actually obtained them. But I don't know when I got the Ravenfrost, but I think it's around here somewhere. And then after all of those sort of like basic items and stuff, basically maxing out on max damage charms, so like the ones with plus 10, it's basically the same as these charms here, just without the faster arm walk bonus. So those charms, single modded sharp grand charms, they're a lot cheaper than these ones, and so I was able to obtain quite a few of those in the beginning, so just to kind of crank up my DPS output overall. So they're going to be quite valuable for you if you're rocking a Bowazon. After that, I rolled a Harmony, as I said. That's for that faster run walk boost. I honestly don't remember what I was using before then, probably just nothing. I didn't end up rolling a Hustle. I just opted to use Harmony all throughout. And so I guess it's because Harmony has it's a faster run walk boost than Burst of Speed, but it's also very low maintenance as well. You just switch to it and off you go. And then the Reaper's Toll I mentioned was the real enabler for me to actually start solo farming TZ content. And so pretty much from there, once I got the Reaper's Toll and Wind Force, it was really much, really just gear upgrades from there were pretty much just to kind of speed up the farming rate. So farming solo TZ, while it was possible, was still kind of slowish or fairly sluggish. But I guess it's okay considering it plays a content, but still, there was plenty of opportunities to kind of speed that up. So the next item I got after that was actually a Razor Tail, and that was with Wind Force to get that 100% pierce, just to kind of really make that multi-shot, so to do more damage to more monsters at any one time. This is going to be really valuable, highly recommended if you're using a Wind Force based build. And then I got my first Annie from a declone event. Yeah, just solo Annie, and just got the Annie that dropped and started using that ever since. It's a handy boost to resistances, all attributes, and obviously the XP buff as well. And basically just soon after that, I traded for a plus 10 experience one. Soon after that, I got a Z Torch. So not this one right here, but like a smaller one. I think it's like a 1512. So I traded that for like a couple of Ist runes, I think it was. And so basically that sort of supplemented my charm fit out. So +4 to skills, all res doubled up, all stats doubled up as well. And so it allowed a lot more skill point freedom, particularly with Wind Force, which very much needs it. And so, yeah, the two charms, and then I got a better Annie on top of that. Again, I don't think it's this one. This was actually self-found, by the way. I found this one from one of the drops, so I was really happy with that. One of the best drops in ladder for me so far. And, okay, so at some point, so I was using Sanders up until using War Traps. War Trabs I traded for just any percent War Trabs, and then I actually got these ones here from somebody else, I think. But yeah, it was just basically higher MF slightly. But yeah, any percent War Trabs is fine for a Bowazon. You don't need to get like a 40 or 50. Like just get a 30% one, that's fine. But that's going to be a huge damage boost, but you do lose that faster run walk slightly, so that was part of the reason why that upgrade was a little bit slower compared to everything else, because it's not really that much of an upgrade. If you consider that Sanders boots, if I do have them, I don't. Sanders boots, one thing that people overlook is that it's got plus 100 attack rating as well, so it does actually help with that chance to hit, and yeah, it's actually worth considering just sticking with them for a while before you get yourself War Trabs. Or at least if you're in that position where you're kind of deciding, should I get War Trabs as an upgrade or something else? You're probably maybe worth getting that something else first before that War Trabs upgrade, just because Sanders is actually not all bad when it comes to actually adding a damage output as well. So just keep that in mind. Now the big one, in one of the public games I played, I actually managed to snatch up a low rune from a chest, and there was actually someone right there just about to grab it as well, so I was actually fortunate enough to grab it. I basically used that to roll this fortitude here. So it's a perfect life fortitude, but almost anti-perfect on the res, and I'm pretty much just stuck with that ever since. I think I used a perfect defense Archon plate for this one as well, which I think I actually self-found that one. But yeah, this is a major upgrade, even over Hustle, even though that like you lose that 65% faster run walk speed on Hustle, but I think even then it's still worth that upgrade because it allows you that much more damage output. And in saying that, the reason why that damage output's valuable, obviously not just because you're killing stuff quicker, but because you're killing stuff quicker, you're able to allow your mercenary to not get swarmed as much, and so he can stay alive longer. And so that's where that helped a little bit. And that actually works well with War Trabs, because War Trabs adds flat damage, and then this one adds off-weapon damage as well, so they kind of synergize quite well with each other. And then the next upgrade from there was actually this helm. In saying that, okay, no. Oh yeah. I actually got a version of this helm, which had like, I think I'm trying to remember. It had a lot less stats on it. Like, I have to really look it up, but I think it might have been just 30 attack speed and basically the same amount of damage, like 39 maximum damage, but 30 attack speed. And that was because at the time I was using Wind Force and all I needed was 30% attack speed. So 30 there, 40 on the Wind Force, which at the time was Shield, 30, 40, and then 20, which then got me to the 90% attack speed, and I still had 20 attack speed here, which is basically excess attack speed. But you know, that's fine. It's ever in case if I wanted to switch to Atmas or something like that, or you know, this otherwise just happens to be best in slot anyway, so you know, it doesn't matter. So I was using a 30% attack speed one for a while, and then I upgraded to this one later on. But oh yes, I do. Pardon me, I do have it written down here. So it was a 24 max damage duel and 211 attack speed. So what does that work out to? I think it was 46 max damage and 30 attack speed. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I'm glad I wrote that down. Okay, cool. What did I write here? Oh yeah, so pretty much with all the Sunders that dropped, I traded them off for runes between Umrune right up to Omrune for each Sunder drop. And so I was able to get this circlet, which at the time was the equivalent of a Sur rune, and plus all of the jewels to go along with that. So you could, I guess you could say it's basically a Burr rune at that stage for this circlet alone. And as I mentioned, I changed from using a Shelled Wind Force to a 3914 jewel in here. So I cut down on the shale because I got 30, 20, 20, and then 20. Was able to get my 90% attack speed total from using this without shale. Okay. Then I got a 39 max damage Grand Charm, which this one was actually handed to me, actually, so I was quite fortunate with that one. But then I did give away some items, I think, to that same person as well. I can't exactly remember. Then I got a better torch, so this one right here, 1919, I just traded for that one. Yeah, I had the runes for it, so I was like, why not? Just get some better stats, better res. And then the next big upgrade was actually the Pride. So I did use a Reaper's Toll on my mercenary before that. And then I rolled a Pride. And Pride is actually particularly good in increasing that raw base damage of yours. And the good thing about it as well is because it's an aura on your mercenary, and it's a level, 19? So I was actually fortunate enough to roll a level 19. Because it's an aura, it's always going to be active on you at all times. So if I was to go out of town again, then the moment I step out of town in my mercenary as well, it's going to be active like right then, like right now. So I've got 3 auras, and that damage boost is always going to be there. With Reaper's Toll, it's a Decrepify proc, but in order for it to proc, the mercenary needs to walk up to an enemy, hit it a few times, might take about 3 procs to get it off. You can hit fast, that's fine, but it still takes hits to proc it off. And even if it does proc, it only lasts for 4 seconds, and it only works in a relatively small area. So even though Decrepify effectively is 100% damage boost, it doesn't kick in straight away. It doesn't kick in when you're running and shooting and kiting around because your mercenary is not hitting stuff. And it doesn't kick off straight away, and it only kicks off in a very, very small area on screen. Something like this kind of area right here. If your merc was standing right here, then you'll only be doing double damage to the monsters that are in this area and not around here or here or here or here. Okay? Pride is effectively a 20 to 25% damage buff. After doing all of the calculations, that's what it adds up to. But it happens at all times, and it happens on every single enemy that you could potentially hit. So that's why it's good. It's also got the hit blinds target, so the mercenary can keep himself safe from that. Its damage itself is actually not too great, but it's actually, people can underestimate it as well. Like, you can still do damage with it, especially with fanaticism on myself as well. But he's got the concentration, he's got the bonus to attack rating, damage to demons, and it's also ethereal as well. Like, you can see it's 63 to 138 on a man catcher, really low, but despite that, you can still crank out this much damage, which is not as much as Reaper's Toll, but it is still something. But yeah, the main damage source on your entire build anyway is going to be your Multishot. Okay, so that doesn't really matter. He can still keep himself alive with Leech on that one, and then Treachery as well, just for that faster attack speed. But yeah, that was a big upgrade. Noticeably, not slower, faster clear speeds with Pride, especially in areas like Flare Jungle and all of those areas like that. In certain areas, actually a Reaper's Toll would be better, like if you're fighting Deathlords and things like that, or ghosts that are physical immune, then Reaper's Toll is probably going to be better in those scenarios, but they're few and far between, and for general use, actually this one is very, very good. I got myself a better Annie, so as I said, it's a 2018-10 self-found, so again, it's this one over here. Yep, this one over here. And then after that, I traded for a whole bunch of these charms, which I think they costed on average a Vex to a Olmarune at the time. And so, to my point earlier, the quicker you can get into Hell and start farming at the start of the ladder season, the more profitable trades you can take. And so with these costing only a Vex rune when I first started trading for these and eventually started costing an Olmarune, if you can imagine, like, if you're like a week or two late to the party or even just a week late to the party, these charms are going to be a lot more expensive. And so if you start off slow at the start of the ladder season, then you're going to finish off slow as well if you're starting from scratch, okay? So that's why it's very, very important to have some kind of a strategy to get to level up to like level 70 or 80 within the first day of ladder. Very, very important. So that you can actually start farming and like terror zones and all that, make some very profitable trades and get yourself geared up relatively quickly. I had a little bit of struggle with that at the start because I had to take some time off, go to like my mum's birthday dinner. So I missed out on like 5 hours there at the start of ladder. And then the following day I had to go to a wedding, which is pretty much an all day event out in the valley. So yeah, that took away from time that I could play on ladder as well. And so that kind of brought me a little bit behind. But at the same time, I mean, not at the same time, but that said, we had a good strategy at the start, which paid off. And then I was able to catch up in the end. So that was actually quite good. I'm happy with that. So for the Faith, this is one of the last things I rolled because I would go back to town, see if I can just sort of compare it against my stash. So let's go back here. So the reason why Faith is actually a very hard sort of thing to sort of adopt in your build, or at least you can't do it straight away. And it's because Faith requires 95% attack speed on your build and for a Grand Matron bow base in order to capitalize on the attack speed boost from it. So because Faith doesn't actually have attack speed on it by itself as well, you basically need to max out on attack speed from here. So this is why I had to re-roll this this diadem here, or tiara, with new jewels, because at the time I only had the one circlet, but then I traded for new jewels, it was 40 15s, 3 of them. So I traded for those jewels and basically just unsocketed the initial one that I had and then just put those jewels in. I then had to commit to Nosferatu's Coil, which means ditching my Razor Tail somewhere, this one here. And this one I already had, this one I already had, and because I didn't want to stop using my Fortitude, I pretty much had to get 45 here, 65 in total with plus 20 here, so 65 in total, 75 in total here, and that has Life Leech as well, and then another 20 here, which brings it up to 95%. So that just gets me into the 95% mark to reach the 7%, not 7%, 7 frames per attack breakpoint. Which, if I show you again, shoots really, really fast. So like this. Yeah, and so otherwise the upgrade to Faith really didn't make sense. If I was just shooting at like, oh, game window not showing. All right. Okay, sorry. So I wasn't showing my chat as well. Sorry I missed that, guys. Here we go. Okay, so yeah, I was going to show the attack speed. So this attack speed here is 7 frames per attack. If I couldn't get 7 frames per attack, then it didn't make sense to actually go for a Faith at all, because otherwise Windforce would have just done similar, if not a slightly better job, because even though it's shooting slightly slower, the damage is much higher. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I had both screens. Neither of them are showing chat, so thanks for messaging me on Battle.net. But yeah, as I was saying before, because I was using Razor Tail earlier. If I wanted to use this one, then I had to switch that out for something with 10% attack speed, and I also had to basically get rid of the initial jewels that I had in here. So I had like 30% attack speed and 46 max damage in total. It wasn't going to cut it from an attack speed point of view, so that's why I had to get the new jewels and hit that 45% attack speed on this item alone. Then 20 here, 10 here, and then 20 here, which then adds up exactly to 95% that I need for this bow. And yeah, so that makes the Faith actually worth using. And then the other thing as well is that Faith really isn't worth using unless you can also get your charms as well. Well, I guess having said that, Wind Force does benefit a lot from these charms too because of the attack rating boost, but yeah, I guess, yeah, I'll sort of back out on that point. Basically, both builds need it, but for different reasons. So Faith needs it for the damage boost, Wind Force needs it for the attack rating boost. So I'll just head back into the doco, and I'll see if I can actually, yeah, there we go. I'll put chat in front of me this time. Sorry, guys. Put your jar rune down as the key find. Yeah, except I didn't pick it up, so that's not technically a find on my part. So that one was all yours, Billy. But yeah, so yeah, as I've written down here, which I'm not showing my document anymore, so I'll switch back to that. As I have written down in here, I had to remake my tiara, had to use a NOS coil. Oh yes, I had to also use a Jewel Leech ring because I lost my Mana Leech from Wind Force. So I had to use a Jewel Leech ring or I could use a solid Mana Leech ring with like awesome stats on it, but I didn't end up trading for one of those, but I would have if I wanted to. But the other thing that you need to do, yeah, you picked it up, mate. Stop rubbing it in. The other thing I had to do is I had to actually do a respec before using Faith as well, because because you don't need the attack rating boost from Penetrate anymore, because I've only got this at level 1, right? But I've still got all this attack rating. Because I'm not using Razor Tail anymore, I had to basically dump all my points into Pierce as a result of that to get an acceptable amount of Pierce in here, so 90% in this case. Any other things I respect? I probably just notched this down a little bit because Faith has basically a +2, or okay, my one has a +1 to all skills, so I could notch this down a little bit, and it actually only has, I'll just switch to the game again just to kind of show you. God, I really don't like this whole switching about. Okay, there we go. So this one has +1 to all skills, +2 to bow skills, so it could be a little bit better. But Wind Force doesn't have any plus skills at all, so we're trying to leverage those plus skills as much as possible to optimize the skill point placement. And because, yeah, as I said, Razor Tail is no longer used on a Faith build because you need that attack speed, so you need to pump points into here. Valkyrie, we can have a little less points in here because of the plus skills. This one, I think I still pump points into that, that's fine. And then because of the plus to bow skills and plus all skills as well, can notch down Multishot just a little bit. I don't want this too high, just because of the mana consumption, but also because you want to try and fill your weaknesses as well, rather than just pumping all your points in here, because most of those arrows are going to be useless some of the time, if not all of the time. So pumping this into here allows you to deal with your weaknesses of physical immunes a lot easier, and so that's why this one's at level 26. So that's the build, and let me just go back to the doc just to kind of finish up on everything else here. Okay, just one sec. Let's see. So one question here is Enigma, question mark. I didn't opt for Enigma, and the reason for that is because, well, it is a good armor. It's actually one of those armors that is good on static maps like Chaos or places like Cows. We're not doing a whole lot of blind teleporting, and the problem with the glass cannon build like a Bowazon, and also a build that has very bad FCR breakpoints as well, is that if you teleport and do like a blind teleport into like a group of monsters, then you're pretty much toast. And if the goal was to reach level 99, losing XP from deaths is the last thing you want to do. So it's better to go slow and steady, trying to crank up your faster run walk speeds, because it's something that you can control, even though it is definitely slower. I think in the long run, you're better off with faster run walk as a Bowazon, especially if you've got the latency that I do, basically 200, 250 ping like at all times. You can't be teleporting around because like my teleport was just from past experience, like using a sorceress on Battle.net, it would teleport like on the same spot. So I would go like, let's say if I was here and then I cast teleport over here, then I would actually go there. But during the cast of teleport, the latency was so bad that the second cast of teleport would actually target the same spot on the map. And then so I would teleport right on the spot. And then the third teleport after that, because I've physically moved on screen and my mouse cursor is still in the same spot and so it's targeting a different spot, I'll then teleport again. But then because the teleport targeting would actually trigger another teleport before I physically move right after that teleport, I'll teleport here again, and then it'll be some time before I could teleport here, and it will just happen like that. So it's like every second teleport is basically a dud. And if every second teleport is a dud, then it's going to be a huge window of time for monsters to actually take you out, especially if you're a 900 hit point Bowazon. And so it just wasn't viable for me. Yeah, I recommend if you notice that in your teleporting, then definitely no question. As a Bowazon, don't go with an Enigma based build. If you don't have those same latency issues, then maybe Enigma might be fine together with Reaper's Toll, so that you can teleport next to enemies and proc that Decrepify. That's one sort of playstyle some people like to do. Then that's certainly possible for you. Now, just realized I still got a bit to do, but I think that basically covers it for in terms of the build evolution. But basically where we ended up with is a Faith, which, by the way, I forgot to mention, the Faith, I'll show you in game. The Faith is actually a superior plus 15% ED Gramation bow. And even though it's only a +2 to bow skills, I decided to roll it in this because of the higher damage, because damage is more valuable than plus skills. I traded this, I got this for an Ohm rune, and so I could have got a +3 to bow skills, but one with no ED, or this one here, and I decided to go with this one. And I think it's actually better. Obviously, +3 to bow with 15 is a lot better, but you're talking about 6 to 8, 10 burr runes versus 1 Ohm rune in terms of trade cost. So that's why I decided to go for that, because I'm not exactly swimming in burr runes. And that one actually worked out for me, I think. Now, I'll go back to the dock. And I'm kind of just running out of juice in my breath at the moment. Just give me a sec. So, key finds. The low rune was obviously a game changer in terms of being able to roll that 40. Okay. We've got a Geeds is basically a 160, 40, and 14% vendor price. So this is actually a one-off perfect on this stat right here. So it's 160% gold find, 40% magic find, and 14% the vendor price. It can roll up to 15. So it was one-off perfect, and I actually found this in Act 5, one of the like Glacial Trail or something like that. And I traded it off for 2 Burroons for that one. And then I found a 240% Eth Reaper's Toll later on at some point, which at this point I probably found about 2 or 3, I can't exactly remember, Reaper's Tolls at that point. Then I saw one that dropped as ethereal, and I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. And then I identified it, and it rolled to 240. I was like, that is absolutely massive. And that's probably the more important stat than the life leech, I think, unless the life leech rolls really low. But I think it was like a fairly high life leech as well. So I traded it off for 2 Burroons as well. So I was starting to collect some Burroons, and both of these were from solo farming in Terra Zones as well, on top of all of the Sunder Charms that I managed to get. Then I got an Ohm Rune, just sort of out of nowhere. And then this one is the big drop here. So this 1 Shadow Discipline, 45 life Grand Charm. So I found this one in Rocky Waste in a Terra Zone, because only Terra Zones can drop charms like this. And I ended up trading it off for 8, maybe 7 Burroons anyway. If I actually cared about long-term sort of wealth accumulation in Diablo 2, I would have actually kept it. But I decided to trade it off thinking that I would actually use those Burroons in ladder, but I didn't end up really doing that. So, a bit unfortunate, but I suppose what I did do with my Burroons, because I actually saw Burroons drop in price quite quickly, which is a bit disappointing. But what I actually did do is I traded for a couple of these for like a Burroon each, or maybe on average 1.5 Burroons each. So that I've actually got something rolling into non-ladder that I could actually sell for just to try to get some extra gear for my Fire Bowazon. So one of them would actually be used on my Fire Bowazon, and another one I could potentially use on something else. That or trade it off for multiple Burroons for this one, I think, anyway. So let's just go back. So I'm just switching back and forth all the time. It's just driving me nuts. So lots of Sunder Charms, as I said, traded between Umrune and Omrune, and I was actually able to collect so many of these that I was able to collect enough runes to basically try to roll a perfect, not a perfect faith, but I had 3 Jar runes and 3 Ohm runes, I think, or maybe 4. No, 3. I had 3 of each to try to roll a half decent faith, and I ended up getting a 15-1. So I was actually happy with that result. I wouldn't have settled with a 14-1 or a something like that. So I wanted to try and strive for the high end, and I ended up getting it after 3 tries. So that was pretty good. And we've got plenty of other finds as well. So I found a perfect Witchwild String. I found quite a lot of Barizas, and yeah, just a number of other items like perfect Sunder Charms as well, I found. But it's been quite a while since I played, so I can't exactly remember anymore. But I found plenty of other items and traded them off and stuff. So like 4-socket Ethereal Man Catchers, I think I found. Maybe 2 of them, in fact. Traded them off. But yeah. I think as a solo TZ farmer and XP grinder, you can find a lot of items doing that in the end. And so that actually contributed to most of these items here. So the sooner you can get yourself viable for solo TZ, that's definitely what you want to do. Is to farm all that by yourself, and then you can get all these items. Heading into Terra Zones, I'll try and not spend too much time on this, but basically I sort of divided up between good Terra Zones, good ones if you're in a group, and bad Terra Zones. So the good ones were Tail Rush's Tombs, and this is a good one because even if in a public game there's other people doing the Terror Zone, you could easily just do the different 7 of the different tombs, rather than sort of being stuck in the same zone together. Like, so you could just kind of split off within the Terror Zones, and there's quite a lot of area to cover. So that one is actually very good, even if you've got other people kind of like janking the Terror Zone a little bit, then that one's pretty good. Spider Forest, Flare Jungle for a Bowazon, they're very, very good zones because lots of small and weak enemies there. And the champions and stuff, like the shamans, they actually are double champions or bosses because of how the monster works. Tristram was actually a good one for me. A lot of people didn't like Tristram, but I actually found it quite good. If you get a good game cadence going, like in public games, where you just join the same game over and over again, and they happen to be doing like bail runs and stuff, then you can finish clearing out Tristram. Like, so you actually try to find the portal and then clear out the entirety of Tristram all by yourself, including Griswold. Then you can actually do all of that before the bail run actually finishes, then join in the next game and just rinse and repeat. That one actually, I did that for a good hour and got some reasonable experience there. So yeah, that's why I put this one in the good zone. Just double check the screen. Yep. Okay, so in Act 1, all of the open cave areas, so they're usually comboed with like Darkwood, Underground Passage, Cold Plains and Cave, Black Marsh, Hull. And so the reason why they're good is because even if you've got one other person going into the zone, that person can go into the cave area and you could specialize in, say, doing the overworld areas, clearing out the campsites and all of the elites on the surface. And so even if you have someone doing the Terror Zone there, then at least you can actually split that part off and then just join another game once that's cleared. Rocky Waste and Stony Tomb, similar principle with that as well. In these ones, there's also lots of beetles as well, which they give good experience. Yeah, so not too much different from the Act 1 ones, but it is a little bit slower to clear the Stony Tombs. I think because, I don't know if there's ghosts in there, I can't remember now, but certainly the skeletons and the narrow passageways and stuff can be a little bit janky with the clear speeds. And then City of the Damned and River of Flame, you got slightly tankier monsters in those ones than in Act 1, but there's still good density and you can approach them from multiple angles as well because there's 2 waypoints you can approach it from. So that one was pretty good. For the Terror Zones that were good, but only if you're in a group, Wellstone Keep. But if you're in a group, it is by far the best Terror Zone that you can actually do. And they're actually very popular games to do as well. So it's not hard to join a Terror Zone Bail game if it's actually Terror Zone Bail. So they're pretty good. Everyone is in on that action because it's actually like very, very good. Chaos Sanctuary is actually pretty good as well. You can get very, very quick clear speeds with it, with a teleport sork going into the center and then just clearing everything from there. Unfortunately, it didn't come up too much for me. I probably only ever saw like maybe 2 Terror Zone Chaos Sanctuary hours. Like all of the other ones that I did notice were actually while sleeping or at work or something like that. So that was a bit unfortunate, like for me personally. But they're definitely worth catching if you can jump into those ones. And otherwise, all of the indoor Act 5 areas where if you normally were to kind of solo Terror Zone, those areas are really, really frustrating. They're actually very good to do in like group games where everybody's just teleporting around and clearing stuff because there's so many like sort of passageways that turn off and come to dead ends and all that sort of stuff. So if you can at least sort of like kill a few things and then just sort of leech experience for most of that one, then that one's actually pretty good. For the bad Terror Zones, obviously Forgotten Tower is by far the worst because you start from one spot, the maps are relatively small, low density, physical immunes, and you have to even find the tower to begin with as well, which is, takes a bit of time. and it is overall a very, very bad zone. It's like the worst zone, even worse than Burial Grounds, which is probably the second worst. So the second worst one is Burial Grounds because you need to get there from Cold Plains, and there's a very good chance that you'll actually step into Stony Fields instead of Burial Grounds. Even if you actually know the map, it's just kind of like a coin flip as to whether your direction would end up going to Stony Field or if you go to Burial Grounds. You can kind of do like a go to Stony Fields waypoint technique to kind of mark the spot on a map. But I found that didn't work too well every single time, and it does take time in doing that. So you do have to get there anyway. It takes a little bit of time just to run there. Bloodraven herself doesn't give too much experience, and then the two sort of crypty areas, they're kind of like, they're very, very boxed in and low density as well. So overall, not very good for experience, and not really good for anything for that matter. Travincal, the maps are just too small, and the councils are kind of risky as well in Terror Zones, or at least they can take your Merc out very quickly. Durance of Hate, just very dangerous with all the dolls and stuff. So I wouldn't recommend it at all. Only do it if you've got nothing else to do. Kurust, just very low density in general. You have to run around a lot, and you don't encounter too many boss packs there. Plains of Despair, a little bit dangerous with the souls there. I'd say not as much of a danger as Durance of Hate, or at least you got higher visibility, so you know where you're actually going. You can actually spot for those souls fairly quickly. Whereas in Durance of Hate, it's actually not too difficult to run into dolls like around corners and stuff and get yourself killed that way. Well, it didn't end up happening to me, but yeah, that's what I think would happen. If you just go too fast in those areas, like you have to use decoy a lot to kind of draw them out, and that does happen a lot. So any terror zones that are away from the waypoint, so such as the pit and ancient tunnels, a lot of people said they like those zones, but if you're not using Enigma or got a teleport based build, they're actually not very good because they take a lot of time to getting to those zones. And by the time you get to those zones, they could be like, level 87 Terror Zone, which you're like, oh, it's level 87, just save and quit, join another game, do that again. Waste a lot of time just doing that. But once you get into the area, it's actually okay. But before that point, it's actually quite frustrating. Some other outdoor areas such in Act 5, they're just low density, and they could be a little bit dangerous as well, but mainly the low density factor is why they're bad terror zones. Arcane Sanctuary, narrow passages, lots of immunes. If you're like a Lightning Sork or something like that, it works really, really well for you, but if you're Bowazon and you need to walk everywhere and you have to deal with physical immunes, then it's not a good zone for you at all. And then the Den of Evil one. So there's only one boss pack in Den of Evil, so that's an example of a zone that's bad for everybody. It's not because of builds or anything like that, but just because of the way that the map is designed. There's only one boss pack to kill, so you just don't get any experience. In terms of strategy for terror zones, the two strategies I use was either to host my own Bale games or Chaos or Cows, or to ride other people's games. And I would normally just alternate between one or the other, depending on the traction that I get. So if I lost traction with one, then I'll basically just switch strategy to the other, or rename my games or something like that. But you basically want to sort of go between two strategies here. One's not better than the other. It just kind of depends on what games there are and how you can get other people to join your games. So what you want to be doing if you're hosting your own games in particular is try to build rapport with the people that join your games. So for example, try to drop pots at the Wellstone Keep waypoint so that Sork can teleport with full belt of full rejuves in her belt. Just things like that. Otherwise, just do free giveaways of Sunder Charms that you find so that people are more incentivized to stick around a little bit. So try to build rapport with players. I think will help retain players in your game so that you can continue running those games for XP. And writing other games, yeah, you can do that as well. Maybe you could even just do once you finish a run, just stick around and help them out a bit before you join the next game is also something you can do as well, just to kind of build that rapport a little bit. So just try to pay it back while you're doing all those TerraZone stuff. Me personally, I didn't create games where I was like, oh, I reserved this TerraZone. Like, I didn't ever create any of those games. Like, if people went in my TerraZone, like sometimes I might say something like, you're level 87 Paladin, why are you going in here? But at the end of the day, I didn't really kick up too much of a fuss. Just let them in the zone. Just let them have fun. I'm not going to be like, oh, you're not allowed here, or even go so far as to kind of like hostile people that go into my terror zones. So yeah, me, I'm just sort of like a bit more receptive and be open-ended, but you might be a bit different. But yeah, you can create those games if you really wanted to. It's up to you. But if people did reserve terror zones, then I basically ignored half of them. Like if they put it in the game name, something like they mentioned ITZ, something like this, ITZU Bail, something like that, and then usually it's got like a number on here, like 01 or 05. So you might see a game like this, so ITZU Bail, then that means like they've gone through the effort of actually trying to make it clear that they reserve the terror zone, and so because of that, don't be an asshole and just sort of steal their terror zone, because you're joining knowing that you're taking someone's terror zone in doing that. Whereas if someone is creating a game like Bail 01, so it's kind of like I don't know, let's say it's sort of something like this, Bail-01, and then you go into the terror zone and someone says it's reserved, then just basically ignore them. They might hostile you, and yeah, I think what I did in those situations was if I felt I could clear the rest of the terror zone, then I actually would. And I actually found that them hostiling you could be a little bit of a bluff, because I never found people actually chase me in the end. They were just sort of like moan and groan and stuff like that. But if you had just started a terror zone and they hostile you straight away, then that's probably not a good idea to actually go in. But if you're like more than halfway through and you're about to complete it, then just complete it. And if you do spot them on screen or happen to spot them on screen, then at that moment, just leave the game. But yeah, you've got to be on the ball a little bit on that one, but that's something you can definitely do. I did actually come across people that were active PKers, so they just joined games for the sole purpose of PKing people. Had someone do that, and they tried to snipe me, and I managed to get away twice. So they didn't catch me. So bad luck for them. Yeah, that can happen as well. But that was pretty rare. But for the ones that kind of moan and groan and complain and hostile you, they might not chase after you, but they might just instead try to run the terror zone while they're hostile you, but not actively hunt for you. So that's something to remember. But yeah, just be on the ball. If you see them on the map, just be like, okay, I'll get out of here, join another game. It's not worth the XP lost to kind of stick around and try to fight them, because either you might win and you get nothing out of it, or you might lose and you lose XP. So it's just as simple as that. So end result. Now I'll head back into game just to kind of show you where we got to in the end. So you can see my character level 99. That is the only ladder character I've got. I didn't create any others. So naturally my stash is quite full in there. But if we go into lobby, then we go into ladder, you can see season 3, rank 422 across all characters on the ladder season. So that's where I ended up being placed. And then for the Amazons, I placed 63. for the Amazons. So I think I had a better position at some point, but then the amount of times I could play on the tail end of ladder slowly but gradually slowed down because real life started to get a little bit busy. Like I had to, actually, let me just make sure you can see it here. Cool, thank you. So I was getting a little bit busy because actually in the first week of ladder, like after the first week, I actually learned that my wife was pregnant. And so naturally because of that, I had to do like a few more things to kind of like cook around the house and just pick up a bunch of things for the wife or just tend to her needs. Like if she's feeling unwell, then I try to look after her and you know that sort of stuff. So it kind of took away from me being able to kind of play ladder like in full steam ahead. So but it didn't affect it too much, like just like a little bit. And so I think as a result of that, I kind of lost rankings a little bit. But the other reason I think as well is because people started to gear up, and if you're using an S tier build and you've started to gear up and you manage to get that gear, then you're going to be farming quicker than what you could with a Bowazon as a result of that. And so that can naturally result in your progression being taken over by someone else who's managed to gear up with a ST build with Enigma, and or you're just a teleport sork and able to kill stuff with like an infinity a lot quicker, then that can definitely happen. I think I got to like rank I don't know, I don't think I got pardon me, I think I oh yes, I think I got to like, sorry, I'm trying to remember here. I think I got to like 307 at some point here. And for Amazon, I got to 43 or 45. And sorry, that's right. The other reason why I lost rankings is because there was 2 beta weekends for Diablo 4, which I participated in both and live streamed those as well. So because of that, I basically lost 4 days of ladder grinding because of that, and so I lost rankings as a result of that too. So if it wasn't for that, then I could have actually gone a bit higher in rankings, but you know, that's fine. I'm still happy with my result. I do think that the vast majority of these not Bowazons, Amazons here aren't actually Bowazons, but they're Javazons anyway. Like Artemis, you might think that might be a Bowazon name, but I actually was in-game with this person, and they were actually a Javazon with Enigma. So yeah, they definitely weren't a Bowazon. And I'm willing to bet that most of them, if not all of them, were actually Javazons. And so, like, I don't know, I didn't see any like Bowazons that were higher level than me in the entirety of playing ladder. Never saw one. Like I saw a few that were lower level than me, but that's about it. And it was probably only about maybe 4 of them. Like I'm not exaggerating, it was that low. So I only saw about 4 Bowazons below my level in the entirety of playing ladder. And most of the players were Javazons, both higher and lower level than me. And so that's just because, you know, that's what the meta dictates, and so people just want to play meta characters, and so, yeah, don't see too many Bowazons as a result. So I don't know if I was the first Bowazon to hit level 99, or there might have been some others as well. I don't know. It's really impossible to tell, but I'm still quite happy with where we got to in the end. Yeah, so the other point as well, I guess, is could have done better if I hadn't had those real life things kind of like, I don't want to say get in the way, but sort of come up and sort of take away from the game time. Like my mum's birthday dinner and the wedding and all that sort of stuff. I could have done a little bit better as well. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, I can't complain. It was a pretty cool season. Glad to enjoy it. My first and only ladder season ever. Got to 99, which is great. Yeah, so I guess, yeah, overall, it was pretty fun. I got to play with like Billy and so many others, content creators as well. So like KD or Kavoth, got to play with some of the people from there as well. So I really did enjoy it. The question of whether will I ever do it again? I think it's probably a long shot to kind of say I will. Like even if I wasn't doing Diablo 4 stuff or whatever, like probably after this season, because the game's coming out in basically less than a month from now. So even if it wasn't for that, and even if it wasn't for like the in real life stuff that is happening, I probably would only do it again if I managed to get like a more solid team rounded up, or if I made some drastic changes to the game, which I think the game is kind of on life support at the moment, or we could see some potential changes come up in not the next ladder season, but the season after that. Then kind of like a maybe in that case, but then we've got like in real life and Diablo 4 and all that sort of stuff, which I'm sort of dividing my time between the two or three things, or really 2 games, and maybe in addition to all of the other real life stuff that I've already had, then yeah, it's probably likely that I won't. For Diablo 2, then I probably would just stick around and just do just some fun stuff, you know, like speed runs and races with other content creators and build videos and all that sort of stuff. I'll do all that sort of stuff, but I probably won't be playing online like sort of MF grinding and stuff. I've never really been a huge fan of that. I did a lot of that in single player, but I didn't do too much of that online, so I won't be really doing that sort of stuff. But I just want to play characters for fun, just stream them like Bowazon. I'll probably play that and finish it off in the weeks to come. And yeah, just stuff like that. So, yeah, and then the rest of the time, if I'm playing games, would be Diablo 4 or in immediate extent, probably play some Tears of the Kingdom, Zelda, but I'll be playing that offline. I won't be streaming that one. So yeah, just hopping between the 2 Diablo games and just taking care of a newborn once it actually comes out. So yeah, it's going to be quite intense. Yeah, so I can't imagine myself doing another season again. But you know, never say never. It could happen one day, but I'm not holding my breath, and you guys certainly should not as well. So, yeah, I guess that's all I wanted to cover today. I hope that's been useful for you guys. So basically what we covered was just like the preparation stuff for like getting a team together, how we got quite a few players like beyond just that one single team, like set up multiple teams and trying to set up all of the communication and logistics and things like that, all of the wish lists and trading. Got all that stuff covered off today. Covered off the things that we experienced and what we learnt as a result of that. The sort of change in strategy that I needed to do because player attrition set in. And then just went through the entire evolution of my Bowazon build and the gear that I found along the way, or what I was able to trade for at least. Some of the key finds, so these are actually found by myself personally. The Jar Rune, Billy, I did not put in here. That one is your drop, so enjoy. And then my experiences around things like terror zones and how to create games and what to do if other people decided to be assholes and all that sort of stuff. So that's what I covered as well. And then the final result. So yeah, again, pretty happy with that. As I said, I'll probably chuck my 2 cents in about my feelings on how Blizzard have handled the communications and the content around Diablo 2 over the last 2 seasons. I won't do it here. As I mentioned earlier, I won't do it here, but it is something that I'm thinking about covering, even just briefly, probably sometime after the new ladder season kicks off, because I don't have time this week. I'm doing some other Diablo 4 related content on top of everything else, but Yeah, so that's basically just a recap of everything I went through just now. So, wow, we're actually 2 hours in. No way. I didn't know it was going to last that long. Sorry, guys, but I hope this gives you an in-depth into my entire experience of the latter season. So, if you've got any questions around anything that I covered, then just hit me up in Discord, or just any other comments on YouTube videos or community posts or whatever. But Discord's probably the best place to go. So you can find the Discord details on this video, I believe. Let me just have a check. I'm really losing my my breath here a little bit. Really needed that water. So yeah, you can find the Discord details in here. So I'll just paste that down. For you guys joining in the chat here, thanks for joining in. I'll see if I can sort of check over it just to see if there aren't any sort of like questions and stuff. So like Cephas, yeah, is this a standard going rate for Windforce? Yeah, yeah, I thought it would be. Billy, thanks for messaging me in game. Sorry about that, guys. That's my fault. Thanks for sharing this info. This is Nick G. Thanks for sharing this info and journal of your ladder experience. Hopefully this starts a trend for other streamers to show this at the end of their journey. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, look, I enjoyed sharing it. My voice is getting a little bit croaky, so sorry about that, guys. It's something I've been noticing quite frequently these days. I think just the weather's getting quite dry here. But I think it's also because I've got a bit of a sleep debt at the moment as well. So apologies for that. But yeah, if there's any more questions, just shoot it over in the Discord. Whether you just message me privately or just within one of the channels. If you did like it, then make sure you hit the like button on the video. Please do that just so that we can get this more visible so that other people can watch it and learn something. If you'd like to see more Diablo 2 or Diablo 4 content, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. So I'll be covering both games going forward, kind of like in parallel. But I think especially in the early parts of Diablo 4 release, I'll be covering that a little bit more than Diablo 2, at least for a period of time. Especially if, I don't know if I'll be doing a ladder season there. I mean, I might do, but just probably play it casually. But we'll see what happens there. But yeah, my focus is actually just learning the game and providing you guys with my insights. So I've been doing a whole bunch of, I guess, theory crafting and trying to understand Paragon boards and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, just been trying to do all that stuff, trying to get it myself, my head immersed in all that sort of stuff so that I can bring you guys knowledge on that a bit later on. So yeah, on that note, I'll go have some lunch and hope you guys have a great day or evening or morning wherever you are. So yeah, peace YouTube, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.